am calling this meeting of Assembly Education to order. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Assemblywoman Duran.
Here.
Assemblyman Flores.
Present.
Assemblywoman Gorlow.
Here.
Assemblywoman Hanson.
Here.
Assemblywoman Hardy.
Here.
Assemblywoman Krasner.
Here.
Assemblywoman Marzola. Assemblyman MacArthur.
Here.
Assemblywoman Miller. Assemblywoman Nguyen. Assemblywoman Tolles. Oh.
Here.
Assemblywoman Torres.
Here.
Chair Bilbray Axelrod.
I am here, and we are just missing, I believe, Vice Chair Miller. So we do have a quorum. So welcome everyone to our committee. For those viewing our meeting online or on our YouTube channel, participating by phone or video. Just a few quick housekeeping announcements. If you haven't done so already, please mute your microphone when you're not speaking to minimize background noise. Committee members, please keep your camera on for the duration of the meeting to ensure a quorum is present. We do expect courtesy and respect in this committee. We don't always agree on policy, but we need to be respectful of each other and the legislative process. Reminder to folks, you can find meeting materials on the committee webpage on Nellis. And for those of you watching online in this virtual world, we do have several screens going at once. So if you do see committee members looking away, they're likely looking at materials or exhibits for the committee. Today we have 4 bills to hear in a work session. We're going to hear the 4 bills in this order: AB 56, AB 371, AB 416, and AB 419. Then we will recess and come back around 6 p.m. to do our work session. And we will hear public comment at that time. For the hearings today, I've allocated equal time for testimony and support, opposition, and neutral. That will be 20 minutes in support, 20 minutes opposition, and 20 minutes in neutral. Each person providing testimony will be allowed the maximum of 2 minutes, and we will be timing you, and I will have to cut you off if you go over that 2 minutes, just because we are in a deadline week especially, and we have a lot to accomplish in the next day. So if you wish to testify, please go to the link that's listed on our agenda and sign in. Please don't share that information, but tell other people to sign up as well. I will note for the record that Vice Chair Miller has joined, and so she is here. Okay, let's just get into this. So I'm now going to open the hearing on AB 56, and I will turn it over to Lieutenant Governor Kate Marshall. Please begin when you're ready.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, Chair Bilbray Axelrod and members of the committee. Thank you for having me here today. I am presenting a conceptual amendment to AB 56. The conceptual amendment rewrites AB 56 to mirror AB 231 with the addition of the phrase, comma, such as the Armenian genocide, comma, in section 1, and the addition of a member to the committee in section 1.4. Thank you. I stand for questions.
Thank you. And committee members, do we have any questions for the Lieutenant Governor? Assemblywoman Krasner.
Thank you, Chair Bilbray Axelrod. Thank you for your presentation, Lieutenant Governor Marshall. So my question, and I was one of the co-sponsors of AB 231. My question is, why did you decide to choose the Armenian genocide as the one that you would use as an example next to the Holocaust? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman Krasner. Through you, Chair Bilbray Axelrod, to Assemblywoman Krasner. I was guided and I'm very grateful to, and sorry, I should have mentioned beforehand, the Anti-Defamation League, the Superintendent of Education, Jonte Ebert, the Israeli American Council, and members of the Armenian community who are familiar with the Armenian genocide. It is through their guidance and recommendation that I brought that amendment. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for that. Do you have a follow-up? Go ahead.
Yeah,
You are on mute.
thank you, Chair. I did have a follow-up. I'm sorry, did you say the Anti-Defamation League of Nevada supports your bill?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, Assemblywoman Krasner, thank you very much for your question through you, Chair Bilbray Axelrod, to Assemblywoman Krasner. Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions from members? Okay, we will then move on to testimony in support, opposition, and neutral of AB 56, broadcast services. Do we have any calls for support?
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 56, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 892, please state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Elliot Mallon, E-L-L-I-O-T, last name Mallon, M-A-L-I-N, and today I'm testifying in the memory of all those that perished during the Shoah. Today is Yom HaShoah, the day that we in the Jewish community recognize the atrocities of the Shoah, or what you know as the Holocaust. The reason we, and especially I, talk about it so often is to never let the memory of those of my family and over 11 million other human beings, 6 million of which were Jews that perished at the hands of Nazi Germany. Part of the reason we recognize this and honor them, their memories and their stories, is to teach the world what bigotry can do to others. I appreciate the committee for bringing this positive step in recognizing the Shoah with education, as well as recognizing the Armenian genocide, a community that has for so long deserved recognition for what has happened to them and their ancestors. Thank you for the time for hearing this on Yom HaShoah today and honoring the memory of all of those that have lost their lives at the hands of evil. Thank you very much.
Next caller in support.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 916, please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Hello, for the record, my name is Dylan Hosier, D-I-L-L-O-N, last name Hosier, H-O-S-I-E-R. I'm calling in on behalf of the Israeli American Civic Action Network, or ICANN. I will echo the comments of the previous caller, and I stand in strong support of this bill. I thank the chair for hearing the bill today, and I thank the Lieutenant Governor for bringing it forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your call. Next call in support.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 064, please press star 6 to unmute. You will have 2 minutes. Please state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin.
Lena Hovanesian, L-E-N-N-A, last name is H-O-V-A-N-E-S-S-I-A-N. And I would like to thank the Lieutenant Governor for sponsoring this bill. I would also like to thank the Anti-Defamation League. I would like to thank ICANN, and I would also like to say that we, on this Yom HaShoah, we give our respects to the Israeli Jewish community for the 6 million that were lost in the Holocaust. And also, I would like to give this in memory of the 1.5 million Armenians who were killed in the Armenian genocide. And I look forward to working together with the Jewish Israeli community and other communities, such as the Armenian community, who've been impacted by genocide and the horrors and atrocities. So our community wholeheartedly supports this bill, and we look forward to working together. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the call. Are there any other callers in support?
Caller with the last 3 digits of 111, please press star 6 to unmute. You have 2 minutes. Please state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin.
Hello,
Hello, my name is Natalie Penn, Nataliepen for the record. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Natalie. I'm a University of Nevada, Reno alum and Las Vegas native. I'd like to make a public comment on behalf of myself and my fellow peers. Las Vegas is a melting pot, but racism and discrimination is still very prevalent. It doesn't excuse microaggressions or discrimination or racism. I would also like to point out that Title IX does exist in post-secondary institutions for older students, so I feel like it should be the same for high school students as well. By passing this bill, I believe it's a step towards a more positive future and will at least offer an option for solutions for these types of situations. And I do think it's part of the responsibility of a school district to keep their students safe. Thank you.
Thank you for the call. I believe you were referring to a different bill that we heard on Tuesday, but on Title IX. So, but thank you for the call. Are there any other callers in support?
To everyone who has just joined, to give testimony in support of AB 56, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 433, please press star 6 to unmute. You'll have 2 minutes. Please state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin.
Hello. I put myself in the wrong queue as well, so I'll just redo it when it's time for the next bill. Thank you.
Are you calling for public comment?
Yes.
Okay, well, just put yourself back in the queue. Thank you. Next caller in support.
Caller with the last 2 digits of 807. Please press star 6 to unmute. You will have 2 minutes. Please state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin.
For the record, my name is Andy Armenian, ARMENIAN. Madam Chair, Lieutenant Governor, committee members, I just want to simply say that I'm in support of AB 56. Thank you.
Thank you for the call. Are there any other callers in support?
Chair, at this time, the line is open and working. However, there are no more callers in the queue to testify in support on AB 56.
Thank you. And with that, we will close testimony in support and move on to testimony in opposition.
To testify in opposition on Assembly Bill 56, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Once again, if you wish to testify in opposition of AB 56, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. If you wish to testify in opposition to AB 56, please press star 9 now. Chair, the line is open and working. However, there are callers in opposition of AB 56 at this time.
Thank you, BPS. I will close testimony in opposition and move on to testimony in neutral.
To testify in the neutral position on Assembly Bill 56, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Once again, if you wish to give testimony in the neutral position on Assembly Bill 56, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, the line is open and working. However, there are no callers to give testimony in the neutral position on AB 56.
Thank you very much. And we will close the testimony in neutral. And with that, I will close the hearing on AB 56. I am inclined to go ahead and work session this bill.
Madam Chair, Assemblyman Edgar Flores.
Yes.
Hi, thank you, Madam Chair. At this time, I would like to make a motion to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 56. And I just wanted to note that I'm very appreciative of the work the Lieutenant Governor has done in bringing all the communities together, listening to all the voices of Nevadans. And I just wanted to commend her for her tremendous work with this bill and just say thank you to her. But at this time, I would like to make a motion to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 56.
Assemblyman Flores has made a motion to amend and do pass. Do I have a second?
I would second Assemblywoman Nguyen.
We had a few seconds, but Assemblywoman Nguyen has made the second. Are there any comments before we go to a vote? Okay, Madam Secretary, would you please call a roll call vote?
Assemblywoman Duran,
Yes.
Assemblyman Flores, Assemblywoman Gorlow,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Hanson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Hardy,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Krasner,
No.
Assemblywoman Marzola, Assemblyman MacArthur,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Miller,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Nguyen,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Tolles,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Torres,
Yes.
Chair Bilbray Axelrod.
Yes, and I believe Assemblyman Flores and Marzola were on mute. So if you could just indicate that you were, I believe you were yeses on that, since you want to give me a thumbs up.
Yes.
And Marzola, you were a yes as well?
Yes.
Okay, so motion carries. Assemblywoman Krasner was the lone nay on that vote. I thank you, Lieutenant Governor Marshall. I will assign that floor statement to Assemblyman Flores, and I appreciate the committee. We will move on to our next bill, which is AB 371. So we have our own Vice Chair Miller to testify on this bill, and this bill enacts provisions governing discrimination based on race. Vice Chair, please begin when you are ready.
Thank you so much, Chair. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. For the record, I am Brittany Miller, and I represent Assembly District 5 in Clark County. I am here today to present AB 371. I'm also joined by some that I will introduce at the end of my presentation. Whereas systematic racism and structures of racial discrimination create generational poverty and perpetuate debilitating economic, educational, and health hardships, and disproportionately affect people of color, causing the single most profound economic and social challenge facing Nevada. These words are taken directly from SCR 1 that this body passed just this last summer during the midst of the Black Lives Matter movement, declaring racism as a health problem. We now find ourselves in the middle of the Stop Asian Hate movement. At the beginning of last year, I had met with leaders of No Racism in School 1865 and learned about their tireless efforts of requesting that school districts develop policies to address racially charged and hate incidents. Also last summer, we had during the Education Committee, Interim Education Committee on Education, we had to put together a working group as required from Senate Bill 332 to study safe and respectful learning environments free of bullying, cyberbullying, and discriminatory harassment. That working group also recommended instituting a protocol. AB 371 seeks to ensure discrimination based on race is appropriately disclosed, investigated, tracked, and effectively dealt with at the schools. The issue is that students do actually report these incidences, but far too often they find that their reports are minimized, reduced, or dismissed. Rather than start from scratch, this measure builds upon the existing framework of the of the bullying protocols to ensure students are also free from discrimination based on race in the school environment. Under existing laws, reports of bullying must be investigated. The same would be required for discrimination. I will briefly review a few major sections of the bill, and in my review, I am including what will already be applied per the amendments that have been submitted. In sections 1 through 2 of the bill, it requires that incidents based on race are included in the accountability reports to the state and school boards. Section 4 establishes a definition of discrimination based on race. Section 5 requires that incidents be categorized as discrimination based on race in Infinite Campus and in accountability reports. Section 6 requires that restorative justice practices are applied for both the victims and offenders. Sections 8 through 24 include existing laws on the provisions of and affirms that safe and respectful learning environments must be maintained and that no form of discrimination based on race is accepted. Section 19 recommends that members of school safety teams are representative of the students and/or impacted groups in that school and encourages working with community members and groups. Section 21 requires the Office for a Safe and Respectful Learning Environments within the Department of Education and district staff review incidents and make appropriate recommendations regarding interventions or training to address patterns or trends they discover in certain schools. Finally, Section 25 includes accountability measures for staff to comply. The main point of this measure is to ensure that the investigation takes place, because this is literally the first step toward any possible justice. And it's our job to ensure that students feel valued and protected in safe and respectful learning environments that are conducive to their academic and social growth. Additionally, there is one more amendment based on the time between, we have a very short time between when we receive a bill and when we have to turn it in to be introduced on the floor. And in this case, this bill, I had all of 1 hour. So I had to afterwards secure additional signers onto the bill. So there is an amendment to add 27 additional signers from both houses onto this bill. Right now, I would like to turn the presentation over to my co-presenters, who include Ms. Gilgore, Ms. Marshall, Ms. Jones, Ms. Ashley, and Ms. Kara, in no particular order. And then after that, Chair, I will be happy to address any questions. So if we could begin with Ms. Gilgore.
Awesome. Good afternoon, Chair. I'm Axelrod and Vice Chair Miller. My name is Larmea Kilgore, and I'm in support of Bill AB 371. I manage the Education and Youth Development pillar at Nevada Partners with the TAR Hasabula. And so often we hear disturbing and unfortunate stories from CCSD students who experience the harsh realities of racism in school. So I'm here today to share my own personal story. Growing up, my parents instilled in me the do's and don'ts when navigating in white space. However, they never explained to me the complexity of being a Black student entering white educational institutions. Dr. Elijah Anderson, Sterling Professor of Sociology and African American Studies at Yale University, said it best when he explained that Black students entering white space either leave because they are not welcome or stay and endure the constant sting of disrespect on the basis of being Black. I wish I could say that I was one of the students that left the space. However, my mother strongly believed at the time that quality education could only come from a white institution, even if that meant sacrificing my own mental health. Unfortunately, I was one of the students that experienced constant injustice and cruelty from white staff, faculty, and students who never faced any disciplinary actions. Just imagine that for a second. Literally, 5 days out of the week, you must report to the same classroom, see the same people, and interact with the same people who essentially don't want you there. They barely acknowledge you as human, and your complaints about their behavior and treatment falls on deaf ears. Realistically, they feel empowered and justified because they know that there is no disciplinary system in place or repercussions for their behavior. So what do? You go down the psychological rabbit hole. If I fight the white student and severely harm them, I face charges and school expulsion. If I express myself to the teacher, I'm viewed as a threat and singled out by the teacher for the remainder of the year. You switch classes, but the treatment does not change because it is a systemic problem. If I report that concern to my counselor, they say, well, are you sure you're not just being hypersensitive? Your parent advocates on your behalf, and the school's leadership response is, if you're not happy here, you can leave. I still carry the emotional scars from the racism I experienced in high school and my post-secondary education. I was a student that was kicked out of the lunch line for correcting staff that young Black men who are students should not be called boy. I was a student that spent countless hours in the hallway because I refused to be Jim from Huckleberry Finn every time we did popcorn reading. I was a student that received low scores on assignments when my pro-Black ideologies did not align with that of the teacher. The student that was asked to leave the classroom when I refused to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. The Black student who constantly got into arguments with white students who were so arrogant about their ignorance, and those same students who were backed by the teacher. The constant discrimination, isolation, and microaggressions that I experienced in high school caused me serious psychological damage. It is not right that Black students and other students of color must fight against and bear emotional scars from racism in an environment that is meant to teach them. Honestly, my high school and post-secondary educational experience is what inspired me to do the work that I do today. Currently, I am the project manager over the youth development and education pillar, as well as the civic participation and social justice pillar at Nevada Partners. I work closely with multiple levels of government and policy experts to dismantle discriminatory systems of education, mass incarceration, voter suppression, and public health. I'm adamant about establishing partnerships with businesses and community stakeholders to develop programs and events and policies that educate marginalized communities and combat unjust systems. I spent 8 years fighting and advocating for myself as a student at Palo Verde High School and UNLV. I was so focused on surviving in school that academics was not my priority. This bill, ladies and gentlemen, is necessary. Policies need to be in place to address these racially motivated incidents in schools. Sadly, my story is just one of so many. Black students and students of color should not have to survive in school and deal with the increased anxiety and poor mental health outcomes from ongoing racist experiences that go undocumented. Black students and students of color deserve the same as their white counterparts. They deserve the opportunity to thrive. And that is why I'm in full support of AB 371. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. And Vice Chair, will you identify the next person to speak?
Certainly. Let's go to Ms. Marshall.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much. My name is Jonte Marshall. I am the co-founder of 1865 No Racism in Schools, and I am in full support of AB 371. On March 19, 2019, my son, along with 8 other African-American male students, were targeted in a threatened school shooting where 2 Caucasian males threatened to shoot and kill all African-American students at a high school in Clark County School District. At that time, it was identified that there was an absence of accountability, protocol, and process, even withstanding there being a bullying or anti-bullying policy in place. Since then, we have fought endlessly to eradicate racism within the Clark County School District at an administrator, educator, and student level. It is for that reason that we continue to stand in full support of this bill, and we assure you that it is necessary. As parent advocates, we volunteer our time to respond to hate-motivated behavior on school campuses monthly. We receive incident reports where there are no responses to such incidents at schools or the response is inadequate. We will not stand down and we will continue to fight alongside Vice Chair in her efforts. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Vice Chair, I believe you have one more person.
We actually have 3 more who will be speaking briefly for just 2 to 3 minutes. Let's go to Ms. Ashley.
Hello, good afternoon, Chair Bilberry Axelrod and Vice Chair Miller and members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Ashley Ceballos. I'm a senior at UNLV and I completely support the AB 371 bill. It's important that schools and administrators treat racism as they do bullying, as both are incredible issues that impact our youth. When I was in high school, I had stereotypes pushed against me for being Asian. For example, people would always come up to me and ask me to do their nails. And if I said no, they would mock me with their so-called Asian accents. And when I would bring this up to admins, they would simply disregard my feelings and tell me to ignore the comments as that's what normal high schoolers do. My sibling, who is also in high school, has faced multiple situations of racism for being Asian. And as an older sibling, I unfortunately and regretfully could not give her any advice or comfort. As growing up, I was always disregarded and invalidated by the education system when it came to racism. Racism should not be an everyday occurrence. It should not be something that normal high schoolers do, and it needs to be addressed, and the people need to be held accountable for their actions and words, and no one should be desensitized for racism. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony.
Chair, we'll go next to Ms. Jones.
Hello, I'm Amber Jones. So I'm here in regards as a parent with my child experiencing racism in the 6th grade by a teacher being pinpointed and pointed out and even sent to the principal's office in regards to a behavior that took place with another child, making a joke and my son laughing. But he was the only one sent to the principal's office. And because he was an African-American child, he was the only one that was sent to the office because of his supposed aggressive behavior and his attitude in responding, trying to defend himself, saying that I didn't do anything wrong. It wasn't, I was just laughing at the joke, but I didn't say anything. I didn't do anything, but he was the only one pinpointed out. And being a mother, trying to explain to your child how racism is happening and what there is to do. When I went to the principal and to the administration, I did not have any support. And I had to actually have my son removed from the classroom because of the continued racism. So I am also in support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. And next person, Vice Chair.
Yes, finally, we'll go to Ms. Kara.
Good afternoon, Chair Bilberry Axelrod, Vice Chair Miller, and members of the committee. My name is Tita, and I'm a news personality, and I own a tech company here in Las Vegas. My story is very similar to the ladies who joined us here today. I experienced a lot of microaggressions and particularly discrimination with a school dean who I was blamed for something that I didn't do. And when I was trying to explain myself, they didn't really want to hear what I had to say. And they actually wanted me to admit to something that I didn't do. And they got security involved to confiscate my backpack and really violate my privacy without my consent. And it was very traumatizing for me because up until that point, I had never been a confrontational kid. I was in school clubs. I actually was the vice president of the Caribbean Club at Las Vegas High School, which is where I experienced this discrimination. And I remember the dean saying specifically, when he couldn't get me to admit that I did something that I didn't do, he said, "I'm tired of these little Mexican girls lying to me." And he had said that to another dean that was in the office and the security guard as well. And I felt outnumbered. I felt like I didn't have anyone there to support me. You're a kid and you're thinking that adults are supposed to be there to protect you. And I felt defenseless. And so, thankfully my mother got involved and she was able to, really hone in on what was happening. But they threatened to expel me. So that could have definitely kept me from being the first in my family to graduate from high school, being the first in my family to graduate from a junior college, and then of course, being the first in my family to graduate from a university. So I'm 100,000% in support of AB 371.
Thank you for your testimony. Vice Chair?
Thank you so much for the indulgence, Chair. With that, I guess I would just close with saying that I myself, as a staff and even as a legislator, have faced many of the same similar stories that we heard today. And I see what happens firsthand in our schools and how it's handled. And so that's why I'm so passionate about making sure that we provide the safest environment for our students, both physically and emotionally, so that they can thrive. And with that, Madam Chair, I am open for questions.
Thank you. And do we have questions from the committee? I am looking, I am not seeing any questions from the committee. So I will move on to testimony in support. Just to remind folks on the phone, we will have 20 minutes in support, 20 minutes in opposition, and 20 minutes in neutral. So if we do not get to your call, because I know there's quite a few in the queue, please feel free to submit your comments in writing to the committee, and I will make sure that they are listed on our website, on our Education Committee website. BPS, first caller.
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 371, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 576, please state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Chair Bilbray Axelrod. Committee. My name is Eric Jang, ERICJENG for the record, representing Asian Community Development Council. Thank you for Assemblywoman Miller for this bill. We ask for your support for AB 371. Assemblywoman Miller already worked with us, talked to us about this bill almost a year and a half ago. So especially right now as rise of anti-API racism and hate, this is a critical bill to protect our kids, our students when they go back to school. When CCSD released their parent return survey, I found it lacking as the nation's 5th largest school district that they did not provide a racial breakdown for the parents' information. However, we look nationwide. According to Department of Education, the IES survey released 2 weeks ago, only 15% of Asian parents want their kids back to school. We look at the top 3 public schools, LA School District, New York, San Francisco. Asian parents all listed as the least likely to send their students back to school for once school reopens. It's not hard to figure out why. Asian parents, that model minority, we know that our parents love for us to go back to school, but with the rise of API hate, we heard so many heartbreaking stories, and we don't want our students to be the next one. Especially locally, when we have school board trustees recklessly using anti-Asian racism slurs without repercussion, do you really think that our students are safe themselves? We thank Assemblywoman Miller for providing this bill that's critical and providing a safe learning environment, making sure there's no achievement gaps between the minority students, and we urge for your full support for Assembly Bill 371. Thank you.
Thank you. And next call in support.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 824, please press star 6 to unmute. You will have 2 minutes. Please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Hi, my name is Jesse Cruz, Jesse, Cruz, Cruz. And good afternoon, Chair Bilbray Axelrod, Vice Chair Miller, and members of the committee. My name is Jesse Cruz. I'm a current senior at Cane Springs High School in Clark County School District, and I would like to give my support for the passage of Assembly Bill 371 into law. Assembly Bill 371 will allow students to file reports of racism or discrimination in which they will be heard, regardless of wherever the concern may come from. I personally attend a majority minority school with a decent amount of Black, Indigenous, people of color teachers and staff members that still continue to show favoritism or bias towards students of different races. In many cases, Black students specifically experience harshest punishments from different faculty members of different ethnicities, and it's something that should absolutely be addressed. Student safety is the absolute bare minimum guarantee when it comes to what schools should absolutely enforce. Bullying should always be addressed no matter the scope, especially when it comes to issues of someone's race. Just 2 years ago, Black students at Arborview High School were threatened with death and violence, despite half of the student population being white and the other half being of mixed race. Bullying needs to be taken absolutely seriously. Even the smallest of microaggressions can create an atmosphere of intolerance and hate, allowing for its normalization in the school culture. It's not something that will be addressed overnight. However, I believe that it's imperative for the advancement of equity in our school systems. No one deserves to be bullied or harassed or discriminated against by anyone, much less their peers or mentors. And AB 371 will allow a way for students to voice their concerns in a way that will help them and address the past trauma and anything else that goes on in campus. Thank you.
Thank you for your call. Next caller in support.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 969. Please press *6 to unmute. Please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Hi, my name is Kenya Prince. It's KENYA PRINCE, and I am in support of this bill. I am a Las Vegas native. I experienced racism in middle school, in elementary, and in high school. In elementary, I was called the N-word, a nigger. And if that makes you guys uncomfortable on this call hearing the word nigger, imagine how I felt in the 4th grade. The child who called me the N-word was not disciplined. She told me sorry. She wasn't expelled. She wasn't anything. In elementary, I was bullied for being called burnt, Blackie Chan. And in high school, I was one of the 2 Black girls on the debate team that was Black. I experienced so much racism for my color. It's ridiculous. And I'm still traumatized from being called those names. I stand in full support of this bill because it's much needed. We need an outlet, not just Black Americans, but Indians and Mexicans, all of us in color. We need that outlet and that safety to go and tell people about this. I told my parents, they were infused with it. They were inflamed. I feel though I'm just really passionate right now. I feel though as though this bill definitely needs to be passed. We need to work together to make America great. If you want to stop systematic racism, I urge every assembly person to be in and for this bill. Why wouldn't you be? Why wouldn't you be? I thank you for your time, and that's all.
Thank you, caller, for the call and for your obvious passion on this issue. I appreciate it. Next caller in support.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 013. Please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Hello, committee. My name is Lorenzita Santos. Lorenzita, Lorenzita, Santos, Santos, and I'm the outreach coordinator for One API in Nevada. I'm testifying in support of AB 371 because of the increased anti-Asian violence against AAPI students. According to Stop AAPI Hate, about 13% of all AAPI hate crimes are done to our youth. Many of the hate crimes that our youth faces includes verbal harassment, physical assault, and even being coughed and spat on. Our students deserve to feel safe in school, whether that be in the classroom or on their computer. AB 371 ensures that anti-Asian bullying and cyberbullying is properly categorized and reported. We must support our AAPI students. I urge you to support AB 371. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the call and support. Next caller.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 513. Please press *6 to unmute. Please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin. (513), you're unmuted on our end. Is your phone on mute?
I apologize.
We can hear you now. Please go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Good afternoon, Chair Bilbray Axelrod, Vice Chair Miller, and the members of the committee. I'm Joanna Rubio, Joanna RUBIO. Today I'm speaking in favor of Assembly Bill AB 371. AB 371 defines discrimination based on race as an act which is based on the race, color, culture, religion, language, ethnicity, or national origin of an individual in a way that causes harm or creates a hostile learning environment. Because the racial diversity in Las Vegas ranks among the best in the country, people of color continue to face racism and microaggressions at a high rate. By establishing this bill, we will be holding perpetrators accountable, and the school districts will be forced to hold racism at a high scale as they hold bullying. From my personal experience in middle school, with my technology teacher constantly expressing her subtle yet obvious microaggressions against students of color because of their socioeconomic status, to making remarks against my mother, questioning her legal worthy status in the United States, I hope you're able, because you represent us, hope you're able to take my public comment along, and I hereby support Bill AB 371. Thank you.
Thank you for the call and support. Next caller.
Caller with the last three digits of 484. Please press *6 to unmute. Please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Good afternoon, committee and board members. For the record, my name is Veronica McKinney, VERONICA MCKINNEY. I am a born and raised Nevada CCDSD resident, and I graduated class of 2012. I would like to state my support of AB 3171. I am a white Caucasian woman. I have seen racism from elementary school all throughout high school and even at UNLV. From a girl being made fun of for a different kind of hair, to a Middle Eastern middle school student being called terrorist for all 3 years, to a Black woman being manipulated in high school to only do racial pieces and being said that she could only speak well even if she's a Black woman. With all of this, I really do believe that schools need to have some type of protection. In Title IX, we have a protection for sex, and I think we should have the same for race. Thank you.
Thank you for the call. Next caller in support.
Caller with the last three digits, 662. Please press *6 to unmute. Please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Hello, my name is Cherish Smith. It's CHERISH Smith, SMITH. I want to start by saying good afternoon to the committee and board members. And today I'm going to be telling you how undocumented racism has changed my life in the most horrific way. I was being bullied by students because I was Black in Durango High School, and I was judged and mistreated predominantly by the white staff. My junior year, another classmate of mine was taunting me and wanted to fight me with no reason. She followed me all the way home with her group of friends on the bus, by which the way I had to take every day to and from school. They made it a school law that you are still on school property until you touch your doorknob. Well, I made it all the way home to my door, and then she dragged me, which started a physical altercation. The whole situation was recorded, and when I went to school, I showed the principal the video. Instead of trying to help me, they sent me to a continuation school, and I was removed from the county school district. They said because I wasn't in my home, I was still on school property. I had wrote multiple reports of her bullying me, and my mother also made multiple reports as well. However, nothing ever happened. Instead of disciplining the aggressors, they gave me a max sentence and kicked me out of the school district right after continuation. Not only was I an honor student, but I was never in trouble, never been in detention. I was forced to move to Texas to finish school in another state. This affected me so much because the racism traveled in the school system, not just in Las Vegas school districts where I was a victim. I was feeling alone and shoved out and blatantly uncomfortable. I still want the school system to know that regardless how hard they fought to make sure I'm unsuccessful, that I beat that. The school system didn't care about my education because they only see me as an angry Black girl, but I beat the odds. I graduated on time and did with having honors all 6 subjects. I hope you guys pass this bill and make the changes you did when I was in school because I graduated 5 years ago. There's definitely a change that needs to be made, and I'm in full support of AB Bill AB 371. Thank you.
Thank you for the call. Next caller in support.
Caller with the last three digits 080. Please press *6 to unmute. You have 2 minutes. Please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Tarina Elliott, TARINAELLIOTT. I am a Western Shoshone Native American woman from Northern Nevada, but now reside in Clark County. I am representing the Nevada Native American Democratic Caucus here in Clark County. I want to thank Assemblywoman Miller for bringing this forward and for the support of this bill, as well as all the Assemblymen and women for hearing this bill. I support AB 371 because I believe in discrimination on the basis of race is absolutely unacceptable in Nevada schools, where the majority of students are of color. Students deserve institutions that will legally address instances of hatred and discrimination directed at them. This bill would amend a law to address racial discrimination alongside bullying and cyberbullying. This is a moral necessity for the future in Nevada schools and kids. This is more than just discrimination from peers, but also the discrimination from educators and employees in the education system that students and staff of minorities have to overcome in the education system every day. I've personally been discriminated against not only as a student, but also as an employee with crude comments and mascots used to make fun of my race. My own child attends a Clark County school and was told by her coach that she was not allowed to braid her hair for games because it's not a powwow, and that her savage appearance is affecting our game, and also made threats to my child to cut her braids off if she didn't perform to the standards expected. Unfortunately, because of lack of support in this matter and schools not backing all racial comments being made, the coach is now coaching at another school. He was moved off of that campus and got to move somewhere else because of unions backing him. I support this bill for everyone involved, and thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you for sharing that story. I'm so sorry that you went through that. Next caller in support.
Caller with the last three digits of 196. Please press *6 to unmute. You have 2 minutes. Please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Hello, good afternoon, Chair Bilbray Axelrod, Vice Chair Miller, and members of the committee. My name is Miriam Gomez, and I'm an undergraduate student at Nevada State College, and today I'm here to leave a public comment in support of AB 371. The first thing I'd like to touch upon would be the way when you're in the actual classroom learning, there are teachers who, when they hear students call other students racial slurs or anything, sometimes they pretend to not hear it just to completely overlook the situation, to not have to deal with the paperwork, I believe. I think it also has a lot to do with the way staff and administration has favorites in their school and stuff, because they would most likely tell you to ignore, and I think a lot of people have touched upon this, that to ignore any harassment that's being done because it's just what kids do these days. And I think that's kind of not a good way to deal with the situation, especially if you're invalidating not only someone because of how they're feeling, but because of how they look or how they are just need to feel in the moment. Also, I would like to say that I never understood why when I refused to stand for the pledge, it was the last straw for some teachers, but not the last straw when a kid in my history class was calling me a dirty Mexican for telling them that I didn't support, the presidential election in 2016. So yeah, that is all I have for today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for the call. Next caller in support.
Caller with the last three digits of 130. Please press *6 to unmute. Please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Good
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Christine Saunders. That's CHRISTINESAUNDERS. I'm Policy Director with Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada, here in support of Assembly Bill 371. The global pandemic and the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement has created a watershed moment for change. 2020 was a year of reckoning like none before, where hundreds of thousands of people across the nation took to the streets to demand action to systemic racism after the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. In fact, this legislative body took action in that moment to declare racism a public health crisis in the state. Since then, we have also seen a rise in anti-Asian hate crimes related to the pandemic. Our schools are meant to be safe learning environments, but they are no exception from the experiences of racism and hate. In fact, according to the FBI's hate crime statistics, schools were the third most likely location for hate crimes to occur in 2019, and the number of hate-based incidents at schools has only been increasing over the years. Racial discrimination in schools impacts students' ability to learn, their self-esteem, mental health, and feelings of safety. AB 371 requires that when reports of racially motivated incidents are made, school districts follow the same established investigatory protocols as with bullying. This holds educational staff and administration accountable for reporting and addressing such issues. Racism is a learned behavior, and we must take action to address it immediately at our schools. We urge your support of this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you for the call and support. Next caller in support.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 469, please press star 6 to unmute. You'll have 2 minutes. Please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Hello. My name is Shanjarian Coleman. That's for the record. And today I'm in support of Bill AB 371. Because throughout all my years of high school, high school, middle school, I witnessed instances and moments of racism and discrimination, with the most outstanding being my senior year at Cheyenne High School. Now, the school knew my parents were going through a separation, and that year we had got a student killed, which was my childhood friend for a very long time. And that same year, I got shot in the face. I was only 17. I was going through it. I went to a party, and I was at the wrong place at the wrong time. But because of everything that happened at the school, they kicked me out of school, saying I was a danger to the school, even though in the police report it was said it was an accident and I was at the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, this isn't just the only time I've had instances of racism. I can recall at a track meet, because I was actually top 25 in the state for track and field. I won a race, and another white student from Desert Oasis High School said, "I can't believe I let a half-step nigga beat me." Now, the referees and his coach heard him say that and didn't say anything. And people from my own school did not say anything. And it hurt a lot because, you know, we've come so far from the chains that we were in many years ago. And I feel like the fighting has got us nowhere. And I am in support of the bill because I feel there has to be a change. And in order to be a change, in order to see a change, we have to be the change. And the bill will definitely give us that. I thank you for you guys' time, and you guys have a very nice day.
Thank you for your testimony. Next caller in support.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 331, please press star 6 to unmute. Please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Hello, my name is Nestor Sanchez, NESTOR SANCHEZ. I want to say good afternoon to the chair and committee, and I want to voice my support for the bill AB 371 because I know that Las Vegas is a very diverse city, and I do have a privilege that I got to grow up in it, but there are stereotypes that are rooted into like certain cultures and stuff like that. For example, I'm a Hispanic male, but I tend to have lighter skin than that. So throughout my time in CCSD, there have been times when I had to like defend my position, or like not my position. I had to like tell people I am Hispanic, and they would just say, "No, you don't look like it," because I don't have what the general appearance. And I know it's something that is frustrating and something that It's something that my siblings sometimes have gone through too because we don't fit what the stereotype is, and having something like this will make it easier for people who have similar issues and who are falling into stereotypes to be able to voice their like concerns and stuff like that, so they can feel that way they don't feel like they don't belong to the culture that they actually are. Thank you for your time and have a nice day.
Thank you for your testimony. Next caller in support.
Caller with the last three digits of 571. Please press *6 to unmute. Caller with the last three digits 571. Please press *6 to unmute. I will come back to that caller. Caller with the last three digits of 602. Please press *6 to unmute. Once again, caller with the last three digits 602. Please press *6 to unmute. We can hear you now. Please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Thank you. My name is Monique Mouawia, Monique Mouawia. I am a parent of a child in CCSD. I was born and raised in Las Vegas, Nevada. I went to school and university out here. I am in support of AB 371 for many reasons, but one anecdote I would like to share that highlights its necessity. When my daughter first started kindergarten, like most parents, I attempted to move to an affluent neighborhood so she would have the best education that public school could offer. However, that translated to her being one of two minorities in her kindergarten class. My daughter was talked down to, even though she was well above the rest of her kindergarten students when it came to her academics and her ability to learn fairly quickly. Her teacher continued to address her boredom in class as misconduct. So I was able to transfer her to a school in a predominantly Black neighborhood in which she was then placed into a program for accelerated students and has continued to attend that elementary school and has continued to excel. So these things that were cast aside originally because of the color of her skin or how uncomfortable her appearance made other people feel because she was so smart, she was then able to be put into a school where other kids look or sound like her and then excel, which just highlights how many other children are going to school in schools that are not as diverse and have the potential to accelerate and excel in class but aren't given the opportunity because of the color of their skin. I should not have had to move her into a school that was more diverse so that she can get the attention and the push she needed to excel. So I just want to highlight that, and that is why I'm in support of AB 371.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your testimony. Next caller in support.
Caller with the last three digits of 959. Please press *6 to unmute. You'll have 2 minutes. Please state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin.
Hi, my name is Haddee, Haddee Martinez, Martinez. And first, I'd like to say good afternoon, Chairman Bill-Ray Axelrod, Vice Chairman Miller, and members of the committee. I went to a middle school where students were treated with such a strict policy, being in a bad neighborhood with the majority population of students of color. Although half of the students at that school were magnet students because it was a select school, everybody that came, even from the opposite side of the city, we were all treated equally and very unfairly. I have been told to speak English when I was assisting someone in helping them to get where they needed to be. And it was their first day of school, but they didn't understand English, so I had to speak in Spanish with them to assist them because it was also my job as a school ambassador to help them. And I've always felt as though that I shouldn't say my race or my ethnicity due to feeling that it would impact me in some kind of a way. And I would be told something as, so like I'm a beaner, or I would just, me specifically, I would choose not to wear something of my culture to school, feeling as though that I would get pointed out and I would get laughed at, or I would be told things, in just the fact of knowing that if I did get told something, nothing would get done. I have gone into an incident where I was told a racial slur by a student that was not of color, and the only discipline that they got was a slap on the wrist with a warning. But then I heard somebody else tell somebody of color tell a racial slur to somebody else, and they got suspended with no warnings at all. It's the fact of how students get treated, and the school district doesn't do anything, nor schools do anything to help them in feeling as though they matter and that there is some sort of a support for them when incidents occur. I would just like to say that I do support the AB 371. I do support this ruling, and thank you.
Thank you for the call. We are just 1 minute shy of 30 minutes. And as the committee knows, and anybody who watches this, I get very moved when students call in. So I did extend the testimony. We will take one more caller in support. And then I think there's probably 6 people still on the line. And I would just encourage you to submit your testimony in writing. We would very much like to hear from you. So BPS, the next and final caller in support. Thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits 571. Please press star 6 to unmute. Caller with the last 3 digits 407. Please press star 6 to unmute. You have 2 minutes. Please state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin.
Hello, my name is Andrea Espinoza, ANDREA and I am currently a high school senior attending Veterans Tribute Career and Technical Academy, and I am in support of the AB 371 bill. I would like to touch on this topic of microaggressions and aggressions that I have experienced in elementary school, not only me and siblings. In elementary school, this has began with teachers, a student teacher helping my elementary school teacher. And when we would have popcorn reading and I would stutter, she would throw microaggressions towards me and other students of color, saying that the reason that I am not allowed to popcorn read anymore is because of the fact that I have a lower education due to my low socioeconomic. And I would also like to touch on the topic of microaggressions within the disciplinary system of CCSD. Me being a student that had received disciplinary actions in middle school, it was very prominent to me, being a person of color, specifically Mexican American, that I had received a higher punishment than those of my counterparts, being white peers. I was RPC'd, nearly suspended, for standing up for myself. But when a physical altercation happened with a couple of students, one being a Mexican American and a white student, my Mexican American peer had gotten expelled, and the white peer had gotten just a slap on the wrist and was just told to not start physical altercations anymore. And these are just some small experiences that I have experienced from moving from another city, another state, and attending CCSD. These are just something that I wanted to bring up, and why I am in full support of passing the AB 371 bill. Thank you.
Thank you for the call. And with that, we will close testimony in support and move on to testimony in opposition of AB 371. BPS?
To testify in opposition of AB 371, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. To testify in opposition of AB 371, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 288, please press star 6 to unmute. Please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
My name is Jarrell Clark, JerellClark, and I am in support of this bill. I do have kids that are minorities as well as myself. And I definitely experienced it, definitely from being from the South and moving to Las Vegas. It wasn't any really difference. It was literally the same thing that I experienced when I lived in the South to moving to Las Vegas. Didn't anything change. And I can't afford to let my kids experience the same thing that I experienced, just because I have to be the leader and I have to lead by example. And the only way I can lead by example is doing my part to make sure that my kids don't experience the same thing that I went through, or even anywhere close. Because as we know, the world is changing, and as we see, I can't say people are getting more sensitive, but people are getting more aware to the things that are affecting America's life. And us being a minority, we've been affected from the beginning, and we're going to always be affected until someone steps up to make some change. And so I am in support of this bill because I need this bill to make sure that my kids have a future as equal as everyone else that walks on this earth. I thank you guys for listening to me, and you guys have a great day.
Thank you, caller. And we will move your testimony into support, which we had previously closed. We are on opposition now, but we will move that testimony to its rightful place. Do we have any other callers who are in opposition of this bill?
To testify in opposition of AB 371, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, at this time, the line is open and working. However, there are no callers in opposition to Assembly Bill 371 at this time.
BPS, do we still have callers on the line who wish to testify in support? Since we did not have any opposition, if they are, I can take the remainder.
If you wish to testify in support of Assembly Bill 371 and have not already given testimony, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 936, please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jamila Lewis. That is spelled Jameeelah, last name Lewis, Lewis. I'm a Nevada native and constituent. I'm speaking today in support of AB 371 because of my experience being raised in Reno, Nevada, with Black folk only making up 2.81% of the city's entire population. I've experienced racism in schools since kindergarten. I remember being told that I talked too much and that I had to stay inside in kindergarten at Bernice Matthews. I remember going to Rita Cannon Elementary School in Reno, Nevada. And if you know where that is, it's off of Silverado and Whittakin. Because I did not come from a place of privilege or money, I was often in schools with low socioeconomic standings. So I remember going to that school and being made fun of because of how I spoke, because I used Ave, African American vernacular English, because I was different, because my hair was curlier. I remember being made of because they told me my lips, I made fun of because they told me my lips looked like I had Kool-Aid on them and to wipe my mouth. I remember going to high school at Proctor R. Hug High School, and I was asking a teacher why wouldn't they call on me when I was raising my hand, because that was a problem I had. Yes, I was a talkative student, but I was also really engaged in class. And I remember asking why wouldn't they call on me, and they just ignored me. And I said, is it because I was Black? And they said yes. I remember being handcuffed in front of my fellow peers on campus because I was defending someone in a fight. That's been my experience in the schools. I remember going to college at UNLV and being told I was going to have the police called on me because I was standing up for myself and for Black folk on campus. That's the school system we live here in Nevada. So I support AB 371 because I wanted to make a change for my nephews, for my sisters who are still in school. And I ask all of you, I urge you to support this. If you are not racist, please support this bill. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you for your testimony. I believe we have about 3 more callers in support. So next caller.
Caller with the last 3 digits 577. Please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Good afternoon, Chris Daly, DALY, Nevada State Education Association, the voice of Nevada educators for over 120 years. NSEA supports AB 371 to define and include discrimination based on race and existing law related to bullying. Educators understand that a respectful learning environment is necessary for students to best be prepared for learning. School communities should embrace students so they feel safe and welcome. Any incident of racism at school clearly is counter to creating a safe and respectful learning environment and needs to be taken very seriously. Reports of racially motivated incidents should be validated and seriously investigated. AB 371 requires reports of racially motivated incidents to be investigated with the same protocols as incidents of bullying, with heightened public dialogue about systemic racism and protests under the banner of Black Lives Matter and Stop Asian Hate movements. Now is the time for Nevada to do more to address the serious problem of racism in schools. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next caller in support.
Caller with the last 3 digits 959. Please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Hi, my name is Attar Hasibullah. First name spelled Athar, last name spelled Hasseebullah. Thank you, Chairwoman Bilbray Axelrod, Vice Chair Miller, and members of the committee. I'm speaking on behalf of the American Civil Liberties Union in Nevada, where I serve as the executive director, and I'm in support of AB 371. I won't go into personal testimony about my own experiences with racism. I think the committee's heard a lot of testimony in that light today, and I'm appreciative for the committee for listening to that testimony and taking that into account. I did want to make a reference. I do know that a couple fiscal notes were placed on this by the state and by local governments. I did want to emphasize to this committee, by passing this bill, I do think you are doing the right thing, and I think the community agrees with you in doing the right thing in that approach. Obviously, after SCR 1 was passed, public health racism has been identified as a public health crisis. But I did want to note that with the infusion of cash coming from the federal government into both the state and to local governments as well as the school district, there should be no reason why a policy that will help alleviate concerns that minority students are facing should be passed. With that, again, we're grateful to the committee, and thank you for conducting such an excellent hearing and circling back on support testimony. Thanks.
Thank you. And if I am correct, I believe there are fiscals listed, but if you open them up, they are all 0. And I'm looking at I'm trying to find Vice Chair. No, there is a fiscal still.
This is not a money committee, but there are some fiscals, but based on some of the amendments, I'm working with some of the districts and stuff based on some of the amendments with the possibility of getting them removed, and the same with the department. So
thank you for the clarification. And I had misread that. I must have missed one. So I believe we have 1 more caller in support.
Chair, I actually have 3 more callers in support. The next one is the next one is 571. Please press *6 to unmute. Please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Hello, my name is Kai Stanton. Thank you so much, board, as well as this Assembly Miller and everyone in attendance today. I'm very surprised that I've heard so many responses. I thought my child was the only one. I actually graduated in Minden. My father, years ago, served as a officer, and my uncle in Nevada. I was very disturbed when my 10-year-old came home in 2019 and told me that he attended a class while he was talking to his classmate. Surprisingly, the teacher asked him why was he talking to, and his words, which is recorded on video, stated, "Don't look the white boy in the face, go sit in the back of the classroom," and proceeded to march him in the back of the classroom. Not only was I shocked and appalled about the verbiage, but when I asked why that happened, as well as followed up with emails and various meetings, the basic response was it was a joke. I was deeply concerned about this level of joke, on how a child so little can process that level of a joke, let alone an adult. We don't communicate that in our home. We've been very strong advocates for the law, as well as part of the process. Myself, being an educator, understanding and the sensitivity of making sure all education is given across the board equally, no matter what background you come from. We are a battle-born state, incorporating everyone to make sure that we grow stronger as a unity. And I think documentation is very important when you're looking at so much passion being communicated. But when you see it in documentation, as well as saying together as a battle-born state, we will grow together. I do strongly believe that the AB 7371 bill will do that for us. I am in strong support of that. Not just an advocate for a parent, but an advocate for a growing, diverse Nevada. Thank you.
Thank you for the call. We have 2 more callers in support, and then we will move on.
Thank you, Chair. Caller, if you could press *6 to unmute.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Please state and spell your name for the
right.
record. You may begin.
My name is Pedro Rosas Rubio, Pedro Rosas, and racism has happened too many times in school for me, and one of them was when I didn't understand any English, and other students treated me different and tried to speak Spanish, but they would just say if I jumped the border, or if stuff like that, and this made me feel uncomfortable and I felt like I couldn't fit in because other students made me feel less, and I think we need to get rid of this, because there's many students that struggle, and for them to not make them feel like they're at home and stuff, Thank you.
Thank you for the call. And final caller in support.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 147. Please state and spell your name. You may begin. Caller, you are unmuted on our end. Is your phone on mute?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry.
No problem.
My name is Nixie Sosa. Oh, okay. My name is Nixie Sosa, Nixiesosa. I'd like to say good afternoon, Chair Bill Ray, Alex Rod, Vice Chair Miller, and members of the committee for this opportunity to speak. I'd like to say that I give my full support of Bill AB 371 because I believe that in order to dismantle systemic racism and inequity, holding students, teachers, and staff accountable would be very important. As words and actions that are oppressive or disregarded as something that can be brushed off, these experiences stick and scar students. For example, I had a racist teacher who stereotyped me as an angry Latina, and because of that, they reported to the deans that I supposedly wanted to assault them, that they felt threatened by me, and that I should be kicked out of the school. Luckily for me, I worked with the dean, and they saw my records, I was almost a straight A student. They could not believe these allegations. And therefore, what they did was just sit me down with the PE teacher and talk about what we could do to better our relationship. There was no communication. Nothing got better. The teacher passed me with that class with a D. And that mentally, like, it made me feel terrible because I was like, what did I do to deserve these types of grades when I'm working and fighting for my future and my family's future? Therefore, I believe that implementing a place where we could anonymously report these teachers and they actually be held accountable, we will ensure that students have a brighter future and are safe inside a school environment. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony. And with that, we will close testimony in support for reals, and we will move on to testimony in neutral.
To testify in the neutral position on Assembly Bill 371, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 411, please press star 6 to unmute. Please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, this is Lindsay Anderson, LINDSAYANDERSON, on behalf of the Washoe County School District. I'd like to thank the bill sponsor for working with us to address some concerns, many of which were addressed in her amended language. I wanted to add for the record that the Washoe County School District Board of Trustees adopted a resolution in October of 2020 proclaiming discrimination and harassment will not be tolerated and resolves to create a system-wide commitment to creating an unbiased, inclusive, and anti-racist society through education. An accompanying action plan has also been adopted based on a collaborative approach with our community with concrete steps to address these instances. We share the commitment to addressing racism in schools. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any other calls in the neutral position on AB 371?
Chair, at this time, the line is open and working. However, there are no more callers in the neutral position at this time.
Thank you. And with that, we will close testimony on AB 371. Vice Chair, did you have any closing comments?
Yes, just a few, please, Chair. I would just like to remind people, I know the statistics of Clark County School District much better, but I believe the statistics is that the students in Clark County School District alone represent 178 different countries speaking 79 different languages. For the past 6 years, I've had the privilege to teach in a school where our students speak 59 languages. I love the opportunity to be in a school with kids from all over the world where I get to learn and help them celebrate their cultures and help them feel strong and confident about who they are and proud to be who they are. But the truth is that we still have these racist acts. And in a state or a town or a school district, however you'd like to say it, where we have such an opportunity to be together, to integrate together, and to learn from one another, it almost makes it even more painful that we still have these issues to bear. Last summer, when we passed SCR 1, we need to make sure that those words, the specific words that say systematic racism in structures, cause debilitating educational hardships. And so I was taught, that to actions speak louder than words. We want to make sure that these were just not words on a piece of paper. And AB 371 is our opportunity to put these words into action. The truth is, as beautifully diverse as the state of Nevada is, we have the unique opportunity to actually be the state to lead the way on this. So I'm asking you to all help me and join forces with me and all of these students to actually lead the way, and let's just end the racism. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Miller. And with that, I will close the hearing on AB 371. I would also take a motion to
I'd
amend.
still move to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 371.
Second. I have a motion from Assemblywoman Nguyen to amend and new pass Assembly Bill 371 and a second from Assemblywoman Torres. Do we have any comments or questions about the bill that we just heard? All right, seeing none, Madam Secretary, would you take a roll call vote?
Assemblywoman Duran, Assemblyman Flores,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Gorlow,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Hanson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Hardy,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Krasner,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Marzola,
Yes.
Assemblyman MacArthur,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Miller,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Nguyen,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Tolles,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Torres,
Yes.
Chair Bilbray Axelrod.
Yes, and Assemblywoman Duran is presenting a bill in growth and infrastructure, so the motion does pass with all members present. So I will assign the floor statement to, we have any question, Vice Chair Miller? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Absolutely. Now we will move on to AB 416, which directs the legislative auditor to conduct audits of NSHE. We have a former colleague, former Senator Warren Hardy, who will be presenting this bill. Welcome, Mr. Hardy.
Good morning.
Ready.
Or good afternoon, I guess it is, Chair. Good to be here. Warren Hardy, today representing the Council for a Better Nevada. I have with me Maureen Schaefer with the Council for a Better Nevada, who will have a couple of comments after my presentation, and we'll try to be quick on this, Madam Chair. I know that it's 'tis the season. We bring this bill before you partially as a result of last year's question 1. As you know, that question 1 ballot question to take the regents out of the Constitution failed very, very narrowly. And as we testified earlier this session, we think the public was confused about much of that bill. What they weren't confused about, based on our communications with them and based upon the polling that was done, is that they want the legislature to audit NSHE. They want the legislature to be involved in NSHE. And in fact, even the proponents of question 1 last year said, look, the legislature has the authority over the purse strings. The legislature controls the process through the purse strings. The other reason that I'm pretty interested in this, and in my time in the Senate, I spent 1 term on Senate Finance, which I will just say I wouldn't trade $1 million for that experience, and I wouldn't pay a nickel for another one just like it. No offense to my colleagues who love the budget, but I wasn't one of them. But it became pretty clear to me that the legislature provides something in the order of $1 billion to the system of higher education to function and to run the universities. Yet we don't have a tendency to ask questions. I as a legislature, I am unaware of any other executive agency that has not been audited the way we have sort of left NSHE alone. So I think in the interest of transparency, in the interest of what we overwhelmingly heard from the public during the question 1 campaign, we think it's appropriate, not only appropriate, but incumbent upon the legislature to conduct this kind of study. So, Madam Chair, I will say that I have been in communication of late with the Audit Division. The bill before you in its original form, I think would take somewhere on the order of 300,000 auditors and 17 years to accomplish. Thank you, Madam Chair, for reaching out and putting me in touch with the Audit Division. I worked with them to come up with an amendment that it arrived kind of late, but it is on Nellis now, that is a much more focused representation of what we would like the Audit Division to look at. really, with the failure of question one, it is true that at this point, the legislature's authority is somewhat limited except for this area. And we want to take full advantage of that. As you know, Manager, one of the things I recognized when I did serve on the Finance Committee is that some of the self-supporting funds and some of the investment accounts at NCHI are somewhat of a mystery to the legislature. Our friend, the Chair of Ways and Means, actually brought this up during the special session over the summer about some of these accounts. So specifically, what we're looking for in this legislation is an audit of a couple of things. So the first would be the sources and uses of private money that are donated. We really don't have a strong accounting for those that give donations, that philanthropists that provide money, like the philanthropists so generously did last year in the med school. So we would like an audit of that. Then capital projects at University of Nevada, Reno and the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, to sort of look at the capital improvement project and what's happening there. We've tried to give the leeway to the audit division to sort of to go where that study follows them. Our anticipation is certainly not that they study every capital improvement projects, but that they do enough to recognize that proper standards are being implemented there. And then again, the reserve accounts and the self-supporting budget accounts that are within the system. These can be very confusing for the legislature to understand in the regular ways and means and finance process of the legislature. So we think a look into that is important. So that, Madam Chair, is as quickly as I can provide an overview of what we're trying to accomplish in this legislation. If it pleases the chair, I'd like to allow Ms. Schaefer to say a few words, and then we'll be open to questions.
Please go ahead. Welcome, Ms. Schaefer.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Maureen Schaefer, and I am the Executive Director for the Council for a Better Nevada. We were also a leading member of the Question 1 campaign and echo the remarks by Mr. Hardy regarding the voice of the voters regarding the importance of an audit and something like this. I represent community leaders from labor, business and philanthropy whose purpose is to engage in issues that impact a higher quality of life for all Nevadans. Today, we do support passage of AB 416. The Nevada system of higher education currently receives, as Mr. Hardy stated, a biennial investment of approximately $1 billion from the legislature and taxpayer funds. This important and generous investment ranks 16th in per pupil funding nationally in higher education funding. At the same time, the system of higher education is the only government agency that is the recipient of public funding that's not subjected to public audit of their budget activities. Every Nevada agency that receives public funds, to our knowledge, the Department of Agriculture, the DMV, the State Board of Department of Transportation as examples, these agencies routinely undergo audits through the Legislative Council Bureau's Audit Division as a matter of internal consistency of audit practices and external show of public trust for the accountable and transparent use of Nevada taxpayer funds. And she, with a $1 billion biennial budget, would be responsible to follow the same good governance principles you as a legislature have put in place and rightly asked for and required of other agencies who do receive your state funds, our state funds. Those agencies have complied with this requirement, and it's time for us to consider NCHI to be required and to comply with the same auditing practices in the best interest of stronger governance practices, principles, increased accountability, transparency, improved public trust. So with that, again, in the interest of time and interest of other issues, we thank the committee for bringing this bill forward, and we strongly urge the passage of AB 416. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schaefer. And with that, I will open it up to questions from the committee. As was referenced by Mr. Hardy, we are working off the conceptual amendment that can be found on Nellis. So reference that in your questions. But do I have any questions? I'm looking at the screen. No? All right, you guys got off easy. With that, we will go to callers in support of AB 416. BPS, do we have any callers in support?
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 416, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 633. Please press star 6 to unmute. Please state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin. Caller,
My name is Peter.
Oh, there we go. We
My
can
name
hear
is-
you now. Go ahead.
Yeah. My name is Peter Grema, Petergrema. I'm an undergraduate student at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and a legislative intern for Senator Dallas Harris. I'm calling in support of AB 416. This bill is needed to ensure that the Nevada system of higher education is held accountable, that there is full transparency regarding higher education dollars in our state, and she should be audited during the next biennium in order to have a full accounting of resources to ensure that tax dollars and grants are being used appropriately to bolster student outcomes and success. And she's the third largest line item in the Nevada state budget, yet it lacks sufficient oversight, and there have been numerous controversies regarding Regents and the system as a whole. I've done research on the Board of Regents and have compiled a list of over 120 news articles over the past 5 years detailing controversies and problems with the board, former chancellors, and their treatment of certain institutions in the state. There's this much negative media coverage toward a certain subject is indicative of a much larger issue. A legislative audit can help uncover leftover dollars and also delineate how much school support is coming from tuition versus grants. During an NC budget hearing earlier this session, officials in NC said that they do not know which faculty positions are funded by research grants and which are funded by tuition. This could be an example of one of the issues that could be studied and uncovered during the legislative audit of NC. Improving our institutions of higher education can play a vital role in addressing Nevada's economic issues and helping to diversify our economy. To do so, we must make sure that we have a full accounting of the resources in NC. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for the call. Are there any callers in support?
Caller with the last 3 digits, 124. Please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Paul Moratkin, MORADKHAN with the Vegas Chamber. The Chamber is in support of AB 416 and would like to thank the proponents for bringing this bill forward today. We are in support of the bill and the conceptual amendment that has been discussed today by Mr. Harding. For the sake of transparency, we're supportive of question 1 in the 2020 election cycle. As you know, the Chamber has been a long-standing advocate of audit and financial oversight to help ensure transparency and accountability of taxpayer-funded projects and programs. We've also had productive conversations with NC leadership and appreciate their outreach in the last several months. Thank you for your time, Chair, and consideration. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you for the call. Next caller in support.
Caller, please press star 6 to unmute. Please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Hello, this is Kent Irvin, KENTERVIN for the Nevada Faculty Alliance, the independent statewide association of faculty at the colleges and universities of the Nevada system of higher education. We work to empower faculty to be fully engaged in our mission to help students succeed. The MFA supports AB 416, authorizing financial and performance legislative audits of NC. The legislature has the authority and the responsibility to ensure proper and efficient use of public funds for all state agencies and divisions. We do note in the written comments that I submitted that this was a very ambitious audit as written, and I haven't had time to look at the conceptual in detail, but apparently that addresses that. But among the reasons, I'll move forward. Among the reasons stated in support of the bill in one of the written public comments is tracking the performance of the new funding formula implemented in 2014. That is a laudable goal, and it is important to have accurate information that is presented in a fair manner. Numbers can be cherry-picked to point to a particular conclusion. By selecting timeframes, by selectively including student fees and tuition or other non-state funds along with state appropriations, by including non-formula budgets along with the formula-funded instructional budgets, and by comparing gross amounts instead of per student amounts that account for enrollment changes. To illustrate how we believe the trends in state funding formula of the 7 instructional budgets of the colleges and universities should be properly compared. In my written comment, which is now in Nellis on page 2, we have 2 charts. They show that since the resident weighted student credit hour formula was established, the state appropriated formula funding from the state general fund of similar institutions per student full-time equivalent have tended to converge, as was expected from the WSCH formula. Unfortunately, what it shows is that the state funding has largely converged down to lower levels, especially after adjusting for inflation. But we support the audit to present in an independent way these kinds of data and to have an independent authority doing that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the call. Are there any other callers in support of AB 416?
Chair, at this time, the line is open and working. However, there are no more callers in support of AB 416.
Thank you, BPS. And with that, I will close the testimony in support and move on to testimony in opposition of AB 416.
To testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 416, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Once again, if you wish to testify in opposition to AB 416, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, the line is open and working. However, there are no callers in queue to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 416.
Thank you, BPS. And with that, I will close the testimony in opposition and open testimony in the neutral position for AB 416.
To testify in the neutral position on AB 416, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 457. Please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair Bilbray Axelrod and committee members. For the record, this is Andrew Klinger, ANDREW-CLINGER, Chief Financial Officer and Interim Director of Government Affairs for the Nevada System of Higher Education, speaking in the neutral position on AB 416. This legislation would require the legislative auditor to conduct a performance and compliance audit of the Nevada System of Higher Education. We view this as an opportunity to help identify areas for improvement within NCHE. A periodic review such as this is necessary for every organization to ensure limited resources are being used appropriately and that there is transparency. The Nevada System of Higher Education is no exception. We are testifying in neutral because some of our smaller institutions had expressed concern related to the additional staff resources necessary to meet the requirements included in the original version of AB 416. However, some of those concerns may have been eliminated with the amendment. If this legislation passes, we look forward to working with your auditors to provide the information they need to meet this bill's requirements. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for the testimony. Are there any other callers in neutral position?
Caller with the last 3 digits of 800, please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Good afternoon. For the record, Dan Crossman, Legislative Auditor with the LCD Audit Division. Testifying in the neutral position today on AB 416. Madam Chair, members of the Assembly Committee on Education, I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity just to leave a brief statement on the record today. The Audit Division is always willing to tackle challenges that are posed by the legislature, in this case, an audit of NCHE. We appreciate the opportunity to also have some input on the conceptual amendment. Notably, the proposed conceptual amendment will help the Audit Division be able to focus our limited resources on a more specific audit scope, while still being able to complete the other work that we are asked to do by the Legislative Commission. We appreciate your time and confidence in us to perform these tasks, and I conclude my comments with that. Thank you.
Thank you for the testimony. Are there any other callers in neutral on AB 416?
Chair, at this time, the line is open and working. However, there are no more callers to testify in the neutral position on AB 416.
Thank you very much. With that, we will close the testimony in neutral on AB 416, and I will invite Mr. Hardy back if you would like to make some brief remarks.
Yes, thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for hearing this important bill today. I would like to bring up an issue that Mr. Irvin brought up because I think it's important. We did contemplate an audit and a review of the funding formula in this. In talking to your audit division, that's a fairly large scope and probably should have its own independent audit to do. But the issue that he brought up with looking at that funding formula now that we're a few years having adopted it, we believe is a very critical issue and should be considered. We just don't want to overwhelm your staff. Mr. Crossman told me earlier that if this bill passed in its original form, it would have been the largest audit they've ever undertaken. And that's not really what we're trying to achieve here. And along those lines, I should indicate that the audit division did submit a fiscal note that was fairly substantial based on the original bill. And that should be significantly diminished. Obviously, there's expenses associated with doing these kinds of audit, but we obviously think it's penny wise and pound foolish not to do it. And that's specifically why we chose the audit division. First of all, based on my 30 years in that building, I have complete confidence in that group of people. But also we thought it would be a more cost-effective way to do it. So with that, Madam Chair, thank you again for your time and your indulgence, and look forward to the opportunity to help and work on this audit. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Schaefer, did you have any closing comments?
I don't at this time. I just echo my colleague, Mr. Hardy's sentiments. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you for your work on this bill. I know we started talking about this, Mr. Hardy, quite a while ago, and I actually loved the first bill, but I understand that it was way too expensive. So very pleased with this one as well. With that, I will close the hearing on AB 416, and I would take a motion to amend and do pass AB 416.
I'd move to amend and do pass.
Assemblywoman Nguyen has made the motion to amend and do pass AB 416. And I have a second from
Vice Chair Miller.
Vice Chair Miller. Is there any discussion on the bill that we just heard? Okay, seeing none, I will ask Madam Secretary to take a roll call vote.
Assemblywoman Duran?
Yes.
Assemblyman Flores?
Yes.
Assemblywoman Gorlow?
Yes.
Assemblywoman Hanson?
Yes.
Assemblywoman Hardy?
Yes.
Assemblywoman Krasner?
Yes.
Assemblywoman Marzola?
Yes.
Assemblyman MacArthur?
Yes.
Assemblywoman Miller?
Yes.
Assemblywoman Nguyen?
Yes.
Assemblywoman Tolles?
Yes.
Assemblywoman Torres?
Yes.
Chair Bilbray Axelrod?
Yes, and motion carries unanimously. And I will give that floor statement to Assemblywoman Tolles. All right. All right, well, I will move on, and I am going to pass the virtual gavel over to my vice chair as I will be presenting the next bill.
All right, so Chair, whenever you are ready, I am opening the hearing on Assembly Bill 419, which are provisions governing charter schools, various provisions related to the sponsorship and governance and the management of charter schools and their performance in statewide systems of accountability for public schools. So with that, Madam Chair, when you are ready, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair. Funnily enough, I believe this is my first time testifying before this committee. So good afternoon. And
Chair, not to interrupt you, but you did testify.
The quickest bill ever.
It was like 6 minutes and it's just like, right, yeah. But
You're right. It was so quick.
Okay,
That's
make sure these comments are correct in the minutes. Thank you, Chair.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. For the record, I am Shannon Bilbray Axelrod, representing Assembly District 34, and I'm here to present Assembly Bill 419 for your consideration. A conceptual amendment to the measure is available on Nellis, and I will be speaking to that amendment through my presentation today. Also with me today are Deb Oliver and Jana Wilcox-Levin. After my introduction of the bill and amendments, they will provide you with additional information and respond to questions. This committee has heard testimony nearly every session since laws governing charter schools were enacted in 1997 on how to improve our network of schools and their sponsorship, whether they are school district charters or one of our higher education institutions or state public charter school authority known as SPCSA. This continual drive for the improvement led me to request 419, which aims to further refine charter school governance in your state. And I want to explain to you, I'm sure many of you were surprised when I was named chair of this committee, but I have to say I was absolutely delighted. This was something that I had been thinking of doing a sort of governance of charter schools for some time. And when I was told that I was chair, I was immediately reached out to by Opportunity 180, and they had been working on a charter school governance bill, which became the beginnings of AB 419. So I really leapt at that chance to do some of the things that I had been thinking about over the last many years. And they had a really, really good foundation. And so that's sort of the bill that you see here today. So Madam Vice Chair, at this time, I'll go through the bill and proposed amendments in detail. First, Section 2, and all references to Section 2 in the bill are proposed to be removed. So just take Section 2 out. In Section 3, the amendment asks that the sponsors of all charter schools, not just the SBCSA, to establish standards for the governance of charter schools so that governing bodies have a clear understanding of the performance benchmarks and targets that must be met for their school. Under the amendment, the SBCSA is not required to publish a list of approved training programs on charter school governments, as paragraph B of subsection 1 will be deleted. Additionally, members of the governing body will need to complete training before the opening of the charter school and every 3 years after. The amendment proposed to delete paragraph C of section 3, subsection 3, which would have required additional training. Speaking of training, it's essential that members of SBCSA are up to speed on their responsibility. The authorization of sponsors of charter and charter school governance. Section 4 requires SBCSA members to undergo training to establish their competency in these areas. During the last session and over the course of the interim, stakeholders expressed concerns regarding educational management organizations. That was actually the bill that we heard that was 6 minutes long. And the lack of transparency regarding their financial and business activities, despite being paid with taxpayer public charter school funds. Section 5 and 6 requires a charter school governing body to disclose information regarding service providers, including charter management organizations and educational management organizations, and post certain details online. As I have said before, and I'm sure I will say again, this is about transparency. This is about daylight. If everything is great, but we need to have accountability. Proposed amendment would modify subsection 1 of section 5 by moving it into Nevada Revised Statute 388A.320 to require that members of a charter school governing body disclose certain conflicts of interest. It would also modify subsection 2 of section 5 by requiring the definition of educational management organization to be posted on the website of the charter school's governing body. Section 6 is also proposed to be amendment by requiring in subsection 1 that the governing body of a charter school that receives services from an educational management organization post on its website any contract associations between the member of the governing body or persons related to a member or other charter school group or system of charter schools. Section 6 would be further amended to specifically authorize charter school sponsors to review information or contracts with educational management organizations disclosed under paragraph B, and request that additional details be provided, investigations be conducted, or other actions. Assembly Bill 419 also seeks to improve charter school accountability. Section 7 requires underperforming charter schools that have not requested a change in sponsorship to submit a report to the Legislative Committee on Education on the actions the sponsor has taken to reconstitute the school's governing body or terminate the charter contract. The proposed amendment would clarify that the reports must be submitted on actions taken of a charter school that has received a 1 or 2 star rating in the immediate preceding 3 years. Section 8 of the bill proposed to be deleted by this amendment, as well as paragraph G of subsection 2 of section 9. This section relates to the application forms for a new charter school. The proposed amendment would modify subsection 5 of section 9 to require a sponsor to consider academic, financial, and organizational performance of any charter school that holds a contract with a charter management organization or educational management organization with the application is proposing to contract for a new school. These provisions would also apply to amend charter contracts to expand existing charter schools. Finally, the proposed amendment would add new sections to require a system of charter schools that enroll 2,500 or more pupils across 2 or more campuses to have an advisory position, such as an executive director who, 1, in a supervisory role, oversees the charter school within the system. Number 2, serves as a person in contact for the organization in which the system of charter enters into a contract, including the educational management organization. And 3, is not a principal of one of the schools within the system of charters. I did want to address really quickly, there is a fiscal impact, and I understand that the SBCSA and Nevada Department of Education have submitted fiscals on this measure and the cost of developing regulations and administering the programs established by AB 419. It's my understanding that with the amendment, SBCSA's fiscal note should significantly decrease. We have representatives on Zoom who can answer questions about this as well, and I will be talking to NDE regarding their fiscal note as well. At this time, I would like to, I believe I'll start with Ms. Wilcox to talk about the original intent of Opportunity 180 that brought them here, and then I will go to Deb Oliver to kind of just do a little quick dive on what governance on boards looks like. So, Ms. Wilcox? Ms. Wilcox-Levin, sorry.
No problem. Thank you, Chair, for the introduction, and good afternoon, committee members. My name is Jana Wilcox-Lavin. For the record, although I can go by any combination, it's fine. Thank you for having me today. At Opportunity 180, we're committed to ensuring that every kid has access to a high-quality education that ensures they graduate from high school, college, and career ready, and that they're prepared to decide their own future. And while you've heard from us before on this committee around our big bet on school leadership, another important lever to ensuring a great school for every kid is good governance. So as the chair mentioned, we began working on the foundation of this bill more than a year ago. Organizationally, we support the development and implementation of sustainable school governance models that are accountable to putting kids first. Good governance, as we've heard throughout this session, is really the cornerstone of strong school systems. This bill aligns to our work in 2 key ways, obviously linked to good governance via training and the other related to increased information about schools that partner with management organizations to continue to increase transparency and understanding of those relationships and how those relationships work in support of students, and in particular, the students of Nevada. In the case of the training requirements noted in this bill that may have costs associated with them, we did want to share with you all that Opportunity 180 was recently awarded a federal grant through a competitive process with the U.S. Department of Education. And those funds can be used to provide technical assistance to support the broader public charter school sector, including increasing shared best practices among public schools, district and charter, as well as supporting governance training as articulated here. We will be able to provide technical support using those funds for good governance efforts and other technical assistance through 2024. So the original intent here was really anchored on good governance standards aligned to good governance training across the public charter school sector, as well as increased transparency. I'd be happy to answer any questions that come up along the way. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Wilcox-Levin. And I so appreciate the grant funds that will be available as well. Now I will turn it over to Deb Oliver, who will go over what governance means.
Good afternoon, Chair Bilbray Axelrod, Vice Chair Miller, and members of the Assembly Committee on Education. I'm Dr. Deb Oliver, Executive Director of the Nevada Association of School Boards, or NASB for the record. I'm here today to speak of the benefits of strong school board governance. NASB has worked with Nevada school boards, including the State Board of Education, to implement Silver State Governance, a student outcomes-focused framework for board training and coaching, whose motto is, student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change. The intention of this framework is to translate existing research and the collective experience of dozens of board members and superintendents into a set of tools that boards can use to identify their strengths and weaknesses, as well as to track progress along their journey toward improving student outcomes. Having a strong, unified standard of board governance in place for school boards to opt into will benefit all students. One of the outcomes of Silver State Governance is for school boards to spend 51% or more of their agenda items and school board meeting minutes on goals that improve student outcomes. Specifically, this is what students know, demonstrate, and do. Inviting charter school boards to participate in Silver State Governance and other governance training programs, such as some that NASB provides, could have incredible impact on student achievement. Other training opportunities that enhance Silver State Governance and include a certification in school board governance, a 5-course series that takes a deep dive into school board governance, new board member training, which is something that's imperative for new school board trustees to be introduced to and to understand their role, and also something such as board president training. We've had 5 public school districts and the Nevada State Board of Education go through the initial 2-day Silver State Governance training. The State Board of Education will continue with their coaching, starting with a goal-setting session tomorrow. An example of a school board's progress could be Lincoln County School District. They began implementing Silver State Governance in February of last year. And through the COVID pandemic, the district has seen an increase in their student outcomes, which they're tracking quarterly and are on track with their interim goals. I'd like to note for the record that good governance, Silver State Governance, still accounts for the guardrails and compliance that school boards are required to do, such as their fiduciary responsibilities and maintaining compliance with state and local regulations. The coaching provided through Silver State Governance aligns these activities to the purpose of the school board, which is to create the best student outcomes for the students that we serve. Again, strong school board governance benefits all students. Thank you, and I'm available for questions from the chair or the committee.
Thank you very much, Ms. Oliver. And with that, we are open for questions.
Okay, thank you. I believe our first question comes from Assemblywoman Nguyen.
She is.
Assemblywoman Nguyen?
Hello?
Yes.
Am I up for a question?
Yes, you are.
I'm so sorry. I don't know it's all day today. I apologize. Thank you, Chair Bilbray Axelrod, for bringing your bill. I have a question about Section 9 in the amendment. So I'm not sure who this would go to, you or one of your co-presenters. I'm looking at that section, and it's a section about supervisors or executive directors. And I'm just wondering, is it like typical that we as a legislature legislate some of those? It kind of seems like a staffing issue.
Well,
so
thank
I'm
you.
wondering if that's something that school boards typically do because they know their school situation, or is there what's the intent there? Are we trying to solve a performance issue? I'm not sure what it is. So if you could.
Thank you for that question. I'm very prepared to answer this question because this is something that I believe in. Probably more than anything else in this bill, or very close up in the top 5. So it actually occurred to me when we were getting in the very beginning of education, when we had Mary Przinski come in and talk about the superintendents of all the rural counties. And I just kind of said, all the rural counties, every single one has a superintendent. And that goes from Esmeralda County, which has 81 students, Eureka, which has 349. The one that really jumped out to me was Churchill, which is 3,361 students. All of these have a superintendent position that really oversees their school district. We have many charter organizations in our state with 5,000 or 6,000 kids. So if you don't have that position, like a superintendent or executive director or whatever you want to call, you are basically putting a much more onus on each individual principal to communicate their needs up to the service provider EMO. So what we're trying to do is disseminate that information, have someone be the go-between and be in that supervisor role, and really be there to set these schools up for success. And I kid you not, there are several charter schools in Nevada that have that many students, 5,000 or 6,000.
And then, Madam Vice Chair, may I have a follow-up question?
Yes, please.
So you would have to have another high level, this bill would require that high level executive position that can't be the same principal. Do we have any concerns for those charter schools that are not super large, like some of the ones that are there?
Well, in the bill, it is actually listed that it is for charter school systems that are over 2,500 students and over 2 campuses. So, I don't know, just Joe Schmo's charter school, that one building would not have to have this position, but we are talking about larger systems that we do have, that we want to make sure that there is that oversight. And this is, once again, this is what this is about: governance, this is about oversight, this is about daylight, and really setting these schools up to succeed. We need to give them the tools that they need to be successful, and that includes all of these things.
I just have one other question. I have, is the 2,500, is that a number? I'm not sure, because I know there are high schools in Las Vegas that have 2,700. So I know that that's a lot of kids in a high school, but that is the size of some of most of our high schools, I think, have over 2,500. So I know that seems like a large number. I'm just concerned that having to hire yet another position to oversee the executive director when it can't be the lead principal, it's just kind of added cost. And I don't know if that number is based on something that is kind of based on that, or there. So if you have any thoughts on how that number came up.
Yes, a couple of things. I created the number, I'll be honest with that. But it was after that conversation when I found out that Churchill had 3,361 and had a superintendent. It also says that it has to have more than one campus. So there would be 2 principals But they still need that. And in full disclosure, most systems, I believe, already have this. So this is just putting it to statute that needs to remain, because we don't want to get to a position where, because of cost cutting and financial gain of the EMO, that position is abolished. Because number one, you lose that oversight that gives the charter school the ability to be an advocate for themselves to their EMO.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, Assemblywoman Tolles.
I'm trying to chair from here, sorry.
No, that's fine.
Thank you. And actually, I think Assemblywoman Nguyen essentially asked the same questions that I did. It was just that as I read this, essentially this could lead to, in some cases, having to hire, and presumably I would think somewhere in the six-figure category, an additional person just to fulfill this the way that it's written, if in fact the only person that's currently serving in that advisory executive director role is also serving as a principal. So I shared that same question and concern, and I guess so maybe to still put it into a question, why would it be a negative to have that person also be serving as a principal? Is there something that we're concerned about that is they wouldn't be able to represent as well to fulfill what you're trying to get at? And I appreciate that what you're trying to do. I actually really appreciate this bill. I appreciate all the amendments, and so maybe I'm just not understanding why that's a conflict for them to also still serve as a principal.
Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman Shannon Bilbray-Axelrod. I don't believe it's a conflict. That's not my concern. But if anyone has ever met a principal, their role is that school. They are not out there going to every other school within their charter and trying to find out their needs. You need one advocate, one, and like I said, I believe, and I could be wrong, that every charter system over 2,500 is currently doing this. And if they're not, we did give them the time. Oh, and I forgot that I have Rebecca Fiden on as well, so she can speak to this as well. So I'm going to turn that over because I think I'm speaking in circles. Ms. Fiden.
Good afternoon, Rebecca Fiden, Executive Director of the State Public Charter School Authority, for the record. I know this has been a fast evolving bill, and so I know, Chair, you and I have not had an opportunity to discuss this specific item, but my quick review is there are 3 charter holders that have a what they refer to as a lead principal that may be impacted by this. Again, most of them that are over 2,500 do have some sort of, either superintendent, executive director, some person who's not a dedicated principal, but there are perhaps up to 3, I think, that may need to take a look at their organizational chart and their staffing structure.
And for the record, I did want to point out to the committee on the amendment, we did put the timeline out for that specific provision out further, so it would not impact budgets currently. So they could work on that in the following year for the next July.
Any additional questions, members?
Yes, if I could follow up.
Yes, please, Assemblyman.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, and thank you, Chairwoman, for your question. I mean, for your presentation. I'm sorry. So it's just that last statement is anything that triggered my interest in engaging in the conversation. So if we do have a scenario now where we have a principal serving in that role, have we identified any specific issues presently so now that we have somebody that we can actually look at and say, that is actually happening. We do have a principal that's serving in that role. Have we identified issues where we realized, yeah, we have to make sure that we can't have a principal filling that role.
So thank you for the question, Assemblyman Flores. Shannon Bilbray Axelrod for the record. I'm actually aware of one instance where a principal of a charter actually moved into that position, thereby leaving their principal. It was a move, moved into that position, and then they refilled the principal portion at that individual school. Does that make sense? So they basically got, a better title after having served as a principal of the charter, and then now they'll be overseeing everything. So I think it's just a natural progression, and I think that's the way you would probably see it hired. And yeah, that's it.
Understood. Madam Vice Chair, if I could have a quick follow-up.
Yes, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Chairwoman, you never stop being the chair. You run the committee, you present the bill and run the committee. I love it. Well, and thank you for that. I guess, and maybe this is a better question that I could ask directly to the schools themselves, and I'm sure there'll be an opportunity to engage them. But I'm still trying to understand. I guess I'm trying to understand the problem, right? I get what you've indicated, that it's a natural progression. You start here and you move your way up into that role. But I'm still trying to understand what the trigger was to say we can't have the principal fill that role. And it may just go back to your previous statement. I know you indicated that when you work with principals, and I think we've all had an opportunity to engage with them, and we know how incredibly busy they are and how committed and passionate they are to their particular school. And maybe that's just the bottom line, and where this is coming from, that because you see them the principals you've interacted with, you see them so committed to a specific school that you don't see that they can fit that role. I'm assuming that that's just the logic behind it.
Assemblyman Flores, thank you for the question. Shannon Bilbray Axelrod for the record. So what you have to remember is that most of these EMOs are not in state. They are out of state. And so a lot of times that position of that executive director or whatever is asked to fly, pre-COVID in for meetings, and they travel around to each campus. They are responsible for trainings of all the principals. So this is once again about governance. So I think that is really the key here. And I think it's important to remember that, as I mentioned, one EMO in particular, the largest EMO in the state is based in Florida. So not only does that executive director position lose a day flying there and flying back, but then they're there for the meetings as well. And so if anybody knows, a principal, it's very difficult, even for a teacher, as I'm sure Vice Chair Miller and Assemblywoman Torres can tell, when you miss a day or two, you are very much behind when you get back. So I think this is not like a typical where everything's right here. There's a lot of travel, a lot of communication with the EMO, a lot of budgets, a lot of grant writing, which is another thing that this executive director would be responsible for. So there's a lot more that goes into it than just your typical, principal, who does, by the way, a lot.
Assemblyman Flores, any additional follow-up?
No, I think it's more of a more appropriate that I just speak with the chair after and just engage more in a dialogue than take up the committee's time now. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Assemblywoman Marzola.
All right, my computer is giving me issues. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. So the charter school space is a new space for me, so I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. So are you putting section 9 in, Chair, in order to improve student learning goals, outcomes, just, I guess, student achievement as a whole?
Absolutely. That's the entire basis for this entire bill. It is about proper governance, accountability, daylight, and really what is in the best interest for our students, 100%.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, with that, do we have any additional questions, members? Any additional questions? Okay, not seeing any, then let's go ahead. Broadcasting, can we open the lines for those wishing to testify in support?
Certainly, Vice Chair. To testify in support, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 685. Please press star 6 to unmute. Caller with the last 3 digits of 685, please press star 6 to unmute. Please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Miller and the Committee on Education. For the record, this is Daniel Perot, spelled DANIEL PIERROTT, with our Argentum partners on behalf of our client Pearson. Today we're coming in support of AB 419, the Chair Bilbray Axelrod's amendment. In consideration of time, we would simply like to thank the committee for hearing this important piece of legislation. We'll continue to work with the bill sponsor to ensure high-quality education for all Nevadans. Thank you for your time.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 577, please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Good afternoon, Chris Daly, DALY, Nevada State Education Association, the voice of Nevada educators for over 120 years. NSCA supports AB 419 to provide additional regulation of Nevada charter schools. Over the last several years, NSCA has been calling for greater accountability controls for charter schools, including a cap on charter school expansion. While this proposal was not successful last session, the legislature did pass a 5-year growth management plan. Interestingly enough, while the Charter School Authority was developing this growth management plan, they approved nearly 5,000 new charter slots. This last week, we found that charter school slots are projected to increase 8.6% in fiscal year 22 and a whopping 15.9% in fiscal year 23, while enrollment in neighborhood public schools remains relatively stagnant. We know the explosive growth of charters has been driven by a deliberate billionaire-backed effort to exempt charters from the basic safeguards and standards that apply to our neighborhood public schools. This growth has created an uneven dynamic, undermining local public schools and communities without producing an overall increase in student learning and growth. While the Charter School Authority has made some improvements since last session, including actually conducting site visits, let's be honest with each other. They're only now clearing a relatively low bar of accountability. While it's great that the Charter Authority has begun to address the baked-in biases against disadvantaged students, when looking at overall charter student populations, charter schools serve proportionally fewer at-risk students, English learners, and students with disabilities. Even with progress on more diversity and new charter seats, there is no path for charters to achieve parity in these categories in the foreseeable future. While AB 419 does not address the issue of charter growth or the issue of student mix, it is a modest reform that will provide some additional accountability. It includes the development of qualifications and training requirements for charter school sponsors and members of the State Public Charter School Authority, the disclosure of information on the operations of charters, and additional accountability for operators of the lowest performing charter schools. We learned of the extent of the problems with the inner workings of charter operators and charter management organizations last June when the Nevada Current reported on a dispute between the American Preparatory Academy in Las Vegas and their Utah-based for-profit management organization. This included large payouts to education management organizations where the charter claimed it provided little in terms of services and complicated financial relationships related to charter school facilities. Thank you very much.
Vice Chair, at this time, the line is open and working. However, there are no more callers in support of AB 419.
Okay, thank you. Can we move into any callers in opposition?
To testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 419, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 000, please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Thank you. My name is John Bentham, Bentham. I thank you all for your time today and for your service to the state. I'm currently serving as the board chair for Somerset Academy, Nevada, and I can personally speak to AB 419, specifically the new section, I believe 9, regarding adding language for an executive director in a supervisory position and not a principal. Our Las Vegas system will be celebrating 10 years of educating our Nevada youth as we enter the fall term, providing an excellent education of choice for 7 campuses to nearly 9,000 K-12 students. While our Nevada system is young, our sister system in Florida began nearly 25 years ago and has been an innovator in the charter school movement since its founding in 1997. When I joined the board 5 years ago, we did not have an executive director. Being a professional and an entrepreneur, I initially felt that a potential for an executive director to help guide, assist, and coordinate our growing system would be necessary. Shortly thereafter, the board voted to add an executive director. I voted in favor of this. We hired an extremely qualified individual to serve in this capacity, and he did so for about 3 years. At this point, it's also important to note that prior to our executive director, Somerset had been successful in achieving primarily 4- and 5-star ratings for our school. In 2018, I became the board chair, and as such, I worked closely with our executive director and our administrative team. I also made 2 trips to our sister system in Florida to observe best practices. Since their founding, they had operated without an executive director and have grown to include more than 60 award-winning schools. As I continued my due diligence, I discovered that without an executive director, the Florida system was able to thrive because they were being led by principals. There was an increased collaboration between campuses, communication was improved, and the goal was the student, not any particular agenda of an executive director or any other EMO. I soon became a proponent of this methodology. About 2 years ago, we eliminated the executive director position in Las Vegas, and we moved towards a lead principal model, as this worked for our sister school for nearly 25 years. This was about 2 years ago, and the transformation within our Nevada system has been incredible. Our schools are once again thriving. Principals, administration, and faculty are collaborating and sharing best practices to help their children grow educationally. Systems are put in place with fidelity and purpose, and our principal cohorts have made strides in ensuring we are providing 5-star education on each campus. Additionally, the communication between the board and the administration team is clear, direct, authentic, and not edited in any way. Ladies and gentlemen, there are concrete facts that support my opposition. As stated earlier, before we created an executive director position, our schools enjoyed primarily 4- and 5-star ratings. During the executive director tenure, our star ratings began to suffer. In fact, we had several schools receive a 2-star rating. Now, without an executive director for more than 2 years, our internal testing is once again showing most schools trending towards 4- and 5-star ratings. The Somerset model was created in Florida, and we have adopted and grown it here in Nevada, and it's working as originally intended.
Your time is up. We have
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. You're more than welcome to submit any further remarks, and we will make sure those get on the record. Thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 361, please press star 6 to unmute. Please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This is Renee Fairless, Fairless, for the record. I am the lead principal at Matter Academy of Nevada. My schools are 100% free and reduced lunch schools with 96% to 98% minority students. And we have consistently, within the last several ratings, been 3- to 5-star ratings with 2 shining stars. I am the lead principal, not an executive director at Matter Academy, and one of my major responsibilities is to keep the lines of communication open between all of our principals. My school is a replication of the highly successful network of charter schools in Florida, in which the lead principal model is the norm. I am opposed to AB 419 because I believe it discusses governance in charter schools, ignoring the authority of our governing board. My board chair is Mary Beth Scow, the former highly respected Clark County Commissioner and CCSD board member. I believe that my board is fully qualified to determine administrative roles, such as a lead principal or an executive director. We serve at the direction of the board, and I do not think those decisions should be taken away from the board. I also would like to dispute the idea that there is a lack of transparency. We are monitored by the State Public Charter School and under the direction of Rebecca Fiden. We additionally are monitored and must follow all of the directives and policies of the Nevada Department of Education. We are audited several times, not just fiscally, but also through all of our policies and programs. Thank you very much for your time.
Caller with the last three digits of 232. Please press *6 to unmute. Please state and spell your name, and you may begin.
Hi. Thank you, Madam Chair and the rest of this committee. My name is Lee Esplin. That's Leesplin. And I am the lead principal in Somerset Academy here in the Clark County area. And I'm in opposition of AB 419, especially the last part of an executive director. As Mr. Bentham spoke previously, having an executive director during the time that I've been here, we saw a decline in our schools. And since our board chose to go away from having an executive director, we've seen more collaboration, higher achievement. We have 4 of the 7 schools are 5-star schools, and the other 3 have made significant growth. One of those schools is the highest performing elementary in the state of Nevada, and the collaboration between the schools has been highly effective, and the support of administration and others has been more effective without an executive director. I heard previously talk of travel and having to leave. As the lead principal, I have not had to leave the state once. We collaborate even with COVID. We've done it via Zoom on a regular basis, weekly, sometimes daily. If not every 2 weeks, we have a meeting. And I feel that this bill would take that authority away from our board and away from allowing us to be able to make great educational decisions for our campuses and for our schools to show the high achievement that we've been getting here in the Somerset system. Thank you for your time.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 244. Please state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin.
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Victor Salcido, S-A-L-C-I-D-O, and I'm with the Charter School Association of Nevada. I want to take a moment to thank Chairwoman Bilbray for working with the sector to amend some of the language that was concerning us of the bill as it was introduced. I look forward to continuing to have those conversations with the bill now that these conceptual amendments have been presented. I also think that there are a lot of positive things in this bill that we like, further transparency and good governance training, and because of that, I hope to be able to support it in its final form. Unfortunately, I'm here in opposition for 2 main reasons. The conceptual amendment discussed here today is just that, conceptual at this time. Until we see final language, it is my understanding that we have to take a position on the bill as written, and we did have some concerns there, namely over the independence of the individual boards, which brings me to my second point of concern. In the conceptual amendment discussed here today, there was discussion over mandating the creation of a supervisory or executive director role in a school that has multiple campuses. Personally, I actually think that in many cases this could be a good idea. I can easily think of situations where having such a position could be a good thing, but not everywhere, and no situations are the same. My concern here is that we are mandating from a legislative level questions over staffing and organization that I firmly believe should be left at the board level. It is my understanding that part of the great bargain with public charter schools is more localized control and autonomy in exchange for being held to higher performance and transparency standards and having to do more with less. This issue of mandating a particular position goes to the heart of autonomy and independence of our boards, and that is an argument I will always defend. Again, I thank you for your time and consideration on this matter and look forward to ongoing conversations. Thank you.
Vice Chair, at this time, the line is open and working. However, there are no more callers in opposition to AB 419.
Okay, thank you. Do we have, can we open the line for anyone in neutral?
To testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 419, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Once again, to testify in the neutral position of Assembly Bill 419, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Vice Chair, at this time, the line is open and working, but we have no callers to testify in the neutral position on Assembly Bill 419. Vice Chair, the line is open and working. However, we have no more callers at this time.
Okay, thank you so much. Chair, would you like to make any final questions? I mean, final remarks?
Thank you, committee, for hearing this bill. I know a few comments came out during testimony, one that this bill did not address on future openings of charter. There actually is a section in the bill that specifically talks about low-performing schools within the system not being able to open new schools. So, you know, I think that addresses that as well. As far as the testimony in opposition, I do have to point out that every single one of the folks who called in were from one specific EMO that I believe is worried about their bottom line. I don't know how else to say it, but and I think that is at the peril of our kids, because I think with more supervision, someone who looks out and can be that voice, go for grants, go for the, I don't see how that's a bad thing. And I really think that members, if you have any questions, please come and talk to me, because as you can see, I feel quite passionately about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And with that, I will go ahead and close the hearing on this bill, AB 19, and move on, hand the gavel back on over to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Miller. With that, we are going to recess. It is time for late afternoon committees. We will hopefully be back at 6 o'clock for our work session documents that all of you should have in hard copies, with the exception of Assemblywoman Nguyen and Gorlo, who do not want them in hard copies. So thank